Alright, things are not going so well with the keep and drop brush tools, so what I've done is I've switched over to another tool, the magic brush, to see if maybe that'll work magic for us and save us some time in our masking. Well, okay, here we go. Things are not looking so great. It's not exactly doing magic, it's taking out the dark areas, but not taking out the lighter areas, which is a bit of a mystery because I've got in the drop areas set a lighter area, but maybe I need to add to that. So let me choose the drop eyedropper and say I specifically want to drop out this area. Go back to the magic brush and try again, and that's better. And let me see how close. Well, but it's better, but not so good because it doesn't seem to recognize the edge of the flower. So I'm going to back up and undo that last selection and see, because there is a bunch of properties that you can control, and I've got the transition and threshold values set down pretty low, so I'm going to increase. Now these seem to increase together, but if I increase the transition and the threshold independently, see, no, this is still not looking good. Maybe I need to increase my transition a lot. No, it's still not dropping out the dark green. Maybe high transition and threshold. What's the right combination? No, that's not. That's worse. So I'm going to back on down with my transition value. And it's just can't seem to get rid of this dark area, even though, as I say, the dark greens are selected as drop values. But let me turn the property inspector back on. There's also this painting mode I noticed, and I'm in paint out, but what if I switch to auto mode? Will that help anything? No, actually that's worse. It doesn't seem to understand what I want to do. What about right along the flower's edge? No. In some cases, yes, it's close here, but it's intruding into the petal. And over here it's way into the petal, so this isn't working so well. In this review, I've illustrated Perfect Mask using only 2 photos, but in my testing, I tried a number of others as well. Some subjects were more challenging than the ones shown here, while others less so. In one case, I was able to quickly mask out the background using the Magic Brush tool. In others, involving hair or fur, I had a lot of difficulty getting a good mask. For this review, I selected the orchid photo because it would seem to be a fairly easy task for Perfect Mask, or at the least, not particularly challenging. However, I was surprised and disappointed to discover that the orchid photo was indeed quite a difficult subject. At least, that was my experience. Now, one thing I did notice in my testing is that Perfect Mask works better with small files than with large ones. I'm not talking just about speed here. It was, of course, faster with smaller images, but the quality of the results was also better with smaller photos. However, this orchid photo that I've been using is not a particularly large file. At roughly 3000 by 4000, this 17 megapixel image is pretty much in the mid-range of file sizes today. The latest professional cameras boast resolutions approaching 40 megapixels. As we've seen, there can be lengthy delays due to the segmentation process when opening a photo in Perfect Mask or changing the segment size. Presumably, these delays will grow longer with increased file sizes. In addition to the question of degraded performance, these larger file sizes raise the question of whether Perfect Mask's mask quality would also continue to decline. Another issue of concern is the stability of the product. The stability of the current release is much better than the initial release of Perfect Photo Suite 6, but I continue to experience crashes from time to time. Of course, when these occur, any work done since the last save in Photoshop is lost. And although support for the Wacom tablet is much better, it is not yet smoothly supported throughout Perfect Mask. I continued to experience problems when zooming and panning with the Wacom stylus. These problems were annoying enough that I gave up trying to use the Wacom pen and switched to the mouse. A product that aims squarely at photographers and digital artists needs to fully and smoothly support the popular Wacom tablet. I ran into other quirks and confusing behaviors. Here's one example. I'm attempting to use the eyedroppers to select colors that I want to keep and drop. However, no matter where I click, all I'm getting is a blue color. When I first encountered this problem, I was mystified because there's no blue in this photo. After scratching my head for a while, I eventually canceled out of Perfect Mask and went back to Photoshop. When I got there, I noticed that I had selected the blue background layer before going into Perfect Mask. Since the background layer is the active layer, this explains why Perfect Mask is choosing the blue color no matter where I'm sampling. But what's confusing, of course, is that Perfect Mask displays the top layer and not the active layer. These kinds of glitches end up wasting time, or, if you can't figure out what's going on, lead to giving up on the program. Besides these issues of reliability and performance, the fundamental inability to get a good mask with some images is an overriding concern. Perhaps if I had more experience with Perfect Mask, I might know some tips and tricks that would enable me to do a better job. But I've spent 2 full days testing Perfect Mask, reading the documentation, and watching onOneSoftware's video tutorials. In spite of this, I continue to have problems with what seems like it should be a pretty easy subject. After all, onOneSoftware's claim is that replacing backgrounds has never been easier. I'm afraid that I just can't substantiate that claim. Finally, as a point of comparison, I'm going to show the process of masking out the background using Photoshop's Quick Selection tool. So here we are in Photoshop, and I just want to illustrate by contrast what the procedure might be for making the same sort of selection in Photoshop. And I'm using the Quick Selection tool in Photoshop and just dragging out my selection over the flower's petals. And I'm not making a real exact selection at this point. I'm allowing it to spill out into the green areas right now. But as you can see, Photoshop is doing a real good job of finding the edges of the flowers, and where it's not doing so good of a job, all I got to do is select the subtract version of the Quick Selection tool and go back into those green areas and make a couple of clicks there. So here I am with the negative tool again, and I'm going to reduce the size and click a couple of times, and all I have to do is like that, and it gets rid of the green areas that I don't want. And here I'll continue a little bit more with adding some petals. And as you can see, this can go pretty quickly and with much less of the complexity that we had with the Perfect Mask program. Now, this is going to require some manual adjustments, no question about it, and probably some use of the Refine Edge tool. But I think this is a much more straightforward and quicker approach, and you can see, you're going to get to your endpoint pretty quickly with this approach, whereas you have lots of variables and things to consider with Perfect Mask and still don't know if you're going to achieve your goal. So to conclude, I'd say that Perfect Mask might be an acceptable tool for people who don't have Photoshop, for those who tend to edit small files, and those who don't mind spending some time learning to use it effectively. Personally, though, I think I'll plan to stick with Photoshop for my masking needs for the time being. Thanks for watching this episode of The Photo Performance. I hope you learned something interesting and useful today. Please visit photoperformance.org for more photo processing news and reviews. Follow me on Twitter or on Google+, and please share this info through your social media networks.